Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 26 July 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and The Indian Express newspapers, which are very relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics, we have included two mains practice questions which will be highly relevant for your upcoming mains examinations. So in the first topic, we will see what changed after the 26 years of Kargil war and what still echoes with regard to India's national security strategy. After that, in our second topic, we will look into various dimensions of India-Maldives relations. And then in our simplified section, we will take up 5 articles and we will try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be highly crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. Let's start with the first topic, that is Kargil, Pahalgam and a revamp of security strategy. The context of this topic is that July 26 is celebrated as Kargil Vijay Divas. And on this backdrop itself, a write-up or an editorial has appeared focusing on India's national security doctrine that has transformed from reactive restraint to proactive deterrence. That initially India was showing patience, that only after being attacked India was responding militarily or diplomatically. But now India's stance has changed, that if India thinks that any attack might happen in future, so to prevent that attack, India can strike first. That initially India was showing patience, but now India can strike first and they will hit back harder if any kind of attack is happening. For example, the 2016 surgical strikes where the India targeted, Indian security forces targeted the terrorist launch pads, or the Balakot attack of 2019 where Indian Air Force targeted various terrorist camps, or even along the Indo-Myanmar border, there has been various insurgent groups and their camps along the Indo-Myanmar border, they were also targeted. And most recently there has been various reports that India used some of the drones for the precision attacks on these insurgent camps along the Indo-Myanmar border. And this particular topic is related to your GS paper 3, various security forces, agencies and their mandate, security challenges and their management in border areas, terrorism in hinterland and border areas. So in this topic we will see that what actually changed after the Kargil war, what was the backdrop of the Kargil war, what were the recommendation of the Kargil war review committee, and to what extent we have implemented those recommendations of the committee, and what are some of the persistent gaps that still lies with regard to India's security architecture and how we can address that. So let's briefly talk about this Kargil war itself, which started in the mid of May and it continued till July 26, 1999. And the location of this conflict was the Kargil sector of Jammu and Kashmir, which is now in Ladakh Union Territory. So what happened that due to the winter months, some of the India's posts, the security forces were leaving their post and they were coming back to some of the safer locations. But what the Pakistani army did, they took advantage of the winter months and they occupied India's post, bringing the Leh-Srinagar highway, this was the Leh-Srinagar highway, within the range of this artillery fire. So what they did, they occupied, the Pakistani armed forces occupied some of the strategic locations, the high peaks like the point 5287 or the Jubar, Muntadhalo, or point 5140, Tololing, Tiger Hill. These were the strategic locations, highest peaks, which were occupied by the Pakistani armed forces, and now this highway was directly on the line of the artillery fire of the Pakistani forces. So the Pakistani intrusion was first reported in the Kargil by some of the local shepherds. To actually look up to the situation, Indian armed forces sent a patrol team of the 5 people and they were captured and they were tortured to death and their bodies were also mutilated. And it was Captain Saurabh Kalia whose body, when they were sent back to India, that has created uproar in Indian society. Also, the heavy shelling was done by the Pakistani army that also damaged the ammunition dump in Kargil, and the infiltration was also noticed in Dras, Kaksar and Mushok sector. Some of other sector also like this Mushok Valley, Dras sector, etc., where also there has been report of intrusion by the Pakistani armed forces. And these people were disguised as Kashmiri militants, but later it was confirmed to be the Northern Light Infantry troops of the Pakistani army, which which has done this attack. What was the objective? Why actually the Pakistan did this? It was to disrupt the NH1A, that is the Srinagar-Leh highway. This is the Srinagar-Leh highway, and also to internationalize the Kashmir issue by escalating the tensions between two nations. Also, the Operation Badr was the code name that was launched by the Pakistani for this infiltration. Because see, India has taken an instance, India has always maintained this instance that the Kashmir issue is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. Whereas Pakistan always tries to internationalize, always wants a third party mediation in the case of the Kashmir. Recently, when the ceasefire was announced between the India and Pakistan on the backdrop of the Operation Sindoor, which India conducted after the Pahalgam attack, India said it was the Director General of Military Operations DGMO of Pakistan which first contacted the Indian counterpart, that is Indian DGMO. Only then the ceasefire was announced. However, the Pakistan maintained that instance, and that too after the consistent announcement by the President Donald Trump that it was the President Donald Trump who ensured the ceasefire being announced. But India does not want any kind of third party mediation in the Kashmir issue, whereas Pakistan always wants to internationalize the Kashmir issue. What has been the India's military response with regard to the Kargil? The Operation Vijay was launched on May 26, 1999 to push back the infiltrators. And also it was the Operation Safed Sagar, which was very important, and that has been the air support by the Indian Air Force using the Mirage 2000 and MiG-21s for the precision attacks, and they even did not cross the LOC as per the rules of engagement. Also, the terrain challenges were there, for example, high altitude, the steep peaks, freezing temperatures, and thin air made combat extremely difficult. More than that, the strategic occupation of the Pakistani armed forces at the high peaks, that also created difficulty for Indian armed forces to regain those peaks. More than that, it was such a kind of instance that it was the Indian Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee and the Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was having a meeting. Indian Prime Minister went to Pakistan. They had a good talks. But it was Pervez Musharraf who was already planning this kind of attack, and this happened just after the conclusion of the meeting between the India and Pakistan. So the Pakistan has always have been this kind of backstabbing attitude in India's response. Whenever India wanted to normalize the relation between the Pakistan, they always backstabbed us. And these were the major recaptured points. That was the Tololing, Tiger Hill, 0.4875, that was the Batra top. This is the 0.4875, Dras, Batalik and the Khalubar top. They were regained. Now, what was the outcome of this Kargil attack? By July 26, 1999, Indian forces cleared all occupied posts, and that is the reason July 26 is celebrated as Kargil Vijay Divas. And Pakistan was internationally isolated. Even the US and China supported the withdrawal of the Pakistani infiltrators or the Pakistani forces. Also, the victory happened without even crossing the LOC. That reinforced India's image as a responsible power. And this is again does not happen even in the case of Balakot attack or even during the Operation Sindoor, because during the Operation Sindoor also the attacks that happened across the LOC. Even India targeted some of the air bases which are that deep in the Pakistan. And aftermath of this Kargil attack, the Kargil Review Committee under the K. Subramaniam was set up to identify the intelligence and the operational lapses. And that led to creation of defense intelligence agencies for proper intelligence gathering, actionable intelligence gathering on which the action can be taken, and strengthening of the border surveillance, and various other measures were taken. For example, the border road organization was strengthened, various highways were established along the borders, various other latest measures like Vibrant Village program was established to actually bring prosperity and infrastructure development across the borders. Because apart from the intelligence officers, apart from the military, it is the people, it is the human intelligence which can be of utmost importance with regard to the activities that are happening or that are reported along the borders, especially the infiltration attempt, etc. And see, the intelligence forces are generally known after their failures. This is one of the saying which is very common in the intelligence circles, that they are not known by their success, because what are the nefarious attempts that are foiled by the intelligence forces, those success stories doesn't come into the public domain out of security concerns, but only it is the question mark that are put on the intelligence forces only when any kind of attack happens, when it is said that it is the intelligence agencies which are not doing their work properly. So the Kargil review committee report, a group of ministers was set up to implement the recommendation of the Kargil review committee. The key reforms that were included was to strengthen the intelligence agencies. They should be given the proper modern equipments, their capacity building, their training should be done properly. Also to create the National Technical Research Organization, and only then it was set up. So it is a tech intelligence agency under the National Security Advisor, and which functions under the Prime Minister's office. It was established in 2004 as the technical arm of the Research and Analysis wing, which works under the Cabinet Secretariat. Also, this NTRO report directly to the Prime Minister via the National Security Advisor. It is headed by a chairman which is of the secretary rank of the Government of India. Also, the headquarter of this NTRO is in New Delhi, and it also has a regional and overseas stations to actually go for proper intelligence gathering. What are the functions of this NTRO? It is to collect and analyze the data from satellites, radars and cyber communications as well as signals. For example, the Netra is again one of the major initiative which was launched to actually look up to the internet traffic and analyze some of the keywords like bomb, attack, etc. if they are being used by the public for the communication. Also, it supports the defense and intelligence agencies with technical expertise. It provides real-time actionable intelligence on national security issues, and it also coordinates with various other security agencies like Research and Analysis Wing, Intelligence Bureau, Directorate of Defense Intelligence Agencies, National Investigation Agency, and friendly foreign agencies or the intelligence agencies of the other countries. Also, it established the defense intelligence agencies, so that it is the, for example, we have the military intelligence and we have other intelligence wing of various other military wings like Army, Navy, Air Force, etc. So this defense intelligence agencies had ensured that there is a coordinated intelligence within the armed forces itself. Also improving the coordination among the intelligence agencies, because there has been various reports that there were some reports of any kind of attack before the 26/11 attack happened, but it was the timely action which could not happen on that intelligence. It was lack of coordination between the security forces, between the state police as well as the intelligence agencies, due to which we were not able to prevent that kind of attack. So it recommended for better coordination, and that is the reason the NAT grids or National Intelligence Grid was established, then CCTNS was established, and all these measures actually helped in proper coordination among the intelligence as well as other stakeholders, other agencies. Also enhancing the border management and the surveillance. For these various measures like bold QRT was launched, the fencing of the borders happened, and surveillance with the help of the satellites like IRNSS, which also provides some of the restricted services to the military. Also the setting up of the Andaman and Nicobar command as the strategic military base. This is only one of the theatre command which we have established till now. Also there was push for the jointness that led to the Chief of Defence Staff in 2019. The Office of Chief of Defence Staff was created, and it also led to integrated theatre commands, but still the integrated theatre command could not be established. Also, it led to birth of cold start doctrine, that is the swift conventional retaliation below the nuclear threshold. This was also witnessed during the Operation Parakram, which was launched by India aftermath of 2001 Parliament attack. Also, it led to emphasis on mountain warfare, equipment modernization and self-reliance, and induction of platforms like Rafale, Apache, Chinook, BrahMos, S-400, or even the indigenous the air defense systems like Agni, Prithvi, etc. All that has actually some of the reform measures which were earlier recommended by the Kargil Review Committee. So this Chief of Defense Staff, this office was established in 2019. So this jointness idea was pushed by the Kargil Review Committee, but CDS was actually established on the recommendation of Lieutenant General D.B. Setkar Committee. The aim was to foster greater operational synergy between the armed forces, and this CDS is head of Department of Military Affairs under the Ministry of Defense. He is the single point military advisor to the Defense Ministry. However, he does not have any command authority over any of the forces, and he is the permanent chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee. Also, this Defense Acquisition Council, which was established after the recommendation of group of ministers in 2001, and they again recommended to reform the national security system. The head of Defense Acquisition Council is the Defense Minister. It is the highest decision making body in the Ministry of Defense. The members of the Defense Acquisition Council is all the three service chiefs, that is Navy, Air Force and the Army, plus the CDS, and they actually goes for clearance of various indigenous activities, like what are the various equipments and the modern arms, etc., that needs to be incorporated, that needs to be acquired. And this is a prelims PYQ that was asked in 2024 with regard to the CDS itself. Only if you will be able to eliminate this option second, which says that the CDS exercise military command over the three service chiefs. Just eliminate this option, answer will be in front of you itself. So there are multiple questions in the actual UPSC prelims examination. By only eliminating one option, you can get the answer. By only knowing the main information or the most important information related to any one topic, you can get the answer of the question. Now, it is not only the Kargil attack. India has been the victim of the state-sponsored terror attacks from Pakistan, be it the IC-814 hijack that happened in 1999, where on December 24, 1999, Air India flight which was coming from Kathmandu to Delhi, it was hijacked with 176 passengers on board. And it was first taken to Lahore and then to UAE and ultimately to Kandahar in Afghanistan. And to only get back those hostages, India has to leave some of the dreaded terrorists like Maulana Masood Azhar, who after being set free founded the JEM, that is Jaish-e-Mohammed, which led various attack or which planned various attack on Indian soil like the Pulwama attack. And then the Parliament attack, which happened in 2001, again it was done by the 5 armed terrorists, which led to death of 9 persons including the security personnel. And after the Parliament attack 2001, India went for the Prevention of Terrorism Act POTA 2001. Also, it created that military standoff, that is Operation Parakram. And it then into 2008, the 26/11 Mumbai attack happened, where again there was no direct punishment to Pakistan. It led to creation of National Investigation Agency or the NIA. Also, the NSG's hubs were created because there has been reports that the NSG which was located in Manesar in Haryana could not reach on time to Mumbai. So the regional hubs were created for the NSG. Also, the Marcos presence, that is the elite para commando wing of the Navy, their presence were also increased along the maritime borders. However, the shift began after the surgical strike that happened after the Uri attack, that India targeted some of the terrorist launch pad in year 2016. Then the Balakot strike happened post the Pulwama attack, which led to unfortunate death of more than 40 security personnel. That it was the first Indian Air Force strike across the line of control since the year 1971. And it in 2025 on April 22, the Pakistan-based terrorists killed 26 Indian tourists in Pahalgam. And India responded with the Operation Sindoor, from which continued from May 7 to May 2025. Initially, India struck 9 terror camps, and later, when the Pakistan responded with the targets on Indian cities, the 11 Pakistani air bases were also targeted. For example, initially the terrorist base that were attacked were Muzaffarabad, Bagh, Kotli, Bhimber, etc. And then the military installations that were targeted, their air defense system, their radar systems, etc. were targeted. That, and most important, was the Noor Khan air base, which was one of the strategic air base. And as per some reports, there has been some of the nuclear facilities also of the Pakistan at this Noor Khan air base, which India targeted. So, and after this Operation Sindoor, India was not hesitant with regard to any kind of attack that India will take. India strategically chosen the various targets, be it the terrorist sites or be it the military installations, that it was precise. It was targeted only first to the terrorist sites and then to the military installation without even impacting the civil population. And India also used the BrahMos on Noor Khan Air Base, that also damaged the key nuclear storage facilities, and ceasefire was requested by the Pakistan within the 96 hours. And India's defense system successfully intercepted all incoming threats, resulting in minimal loss of life or property. In contrast, the Pakistani HQ-9 air defense system, which has origin from China, they were exposed as weak. On the night of May 9 and 10, India's counter-offensive became a historic milestone when the first time a country successfully attacked the air bases of a nuclear-armed nation. This is historic. Also, the Pakistan targeted Indian cities and various nuclear installations by drones, which were also intercepted by the Indian air defense system. And they also used various ballistic missiles, which were also taken back by the Indian defense systems. And it was the air defense ammunition depots and air bases such as Sargodha and Bholari, where the F-16, JF-16 fighter jets were stationed. They were also targeted by the India, and that led to killing of the squadron leader Usman Yusuf and 4 airmen of Pakistan. And the India executed precise attacks on several terrorist hubs and the military facilities. And after the Pakistani artillery and mortar attack targeted the civilian areas in the Punch Rajouri sector along the LOC, Indian Air Force retaliated, destroying the terrorist bunkers, Pakistani army positions that were targeting the Indian civilians across the Punch Rajouri section. Also, during this Operation Sindoor, there has been reports that over 100 terrorists were killed, and there were some high value targets, or the HVT, like there has been reports that the brother of Maulana Masood Azhar, whose name was also Azhar, was killed, who was responsible for various attacks in India. However, there are still various existing fault lines in India's national security. For example, the intelligence gap, like there is still a lack of real-time actionable intelligence, and that is inconsistent lack of coordination between the civilian and the military agencies. For example, the state police forces, they are not that cooperative with the union security forces or the union agencies. There has been various issues with regard to the jurisdiction of BSF in the West Bengal or in Punjab areas, etc. So because of lack of coordination, which further doesn't help in proper utilization of resources, as well as when intelligence are not properly utilized well, they are not properly, the work is not done on that properly, again it lead to several gaps, and that may lead to various attacks that we have witnessed in past few years. Also, the border management, LOC is still vulnerable. And why? Because of the difficult terrain, because of the difficult weather, and their support from the over the ground workers, that is OGWs of the Jammu and Kashmir region. And the porous gaps still lies. Because of this difficult terrain, we still could not fence all the border properly, and that leads to infiltration, and that leads to attack on the security forces as well as attack on the civilian population. The smart fencing and the tech integration like bold QRT still are not fully deployed across the full borders. Also, the delay in the modernization. See, India has various needs. The Pakistan, most of its GDP is getting spent on the defense itself. They have high poverty. They have the very high inflation in the economy. Even you will even in the most of the years, you will see the lack of basic necessities are witnessed across various Pakistani cities, be it the tomato, be it the onion, or even the wheat flour. Their prices are much higher as compared to India. So India also is spending a major chunk of that GDP on the defense itself. That is one of the highest contribution is being made for the defense itself. But still, India has various other responsibilities for the economic and social welfare. So still there are delayed modernization, procurement bottlenecks are there, and the bureaucratic delays are there. More than that, it is the lack of efficiency from the PSUs like HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and that has been highlighted by our army chief also, that the Tejas Mk1 that has to be inducted way back, still could not be inducted. The Kaveri engine, for which India spended a lot, but still we could not develop that properly. So with this there is slow indigenous defense production. Also the jointness and the theatre command, that is tri-service synergies, is still work in progress. There has been resistance from the security forces itself for the theaterization, because there are apprehensions, there has been various reports that the security forces have these apprehensions that the individual autonomy of the various security forces might be lost. So this is said by the critics why we are witnessing the slow tri-service synergy. Also the cyber and space vulnerabilities. Even when this Operation Sindoor was going on, there has been various cyber attack that happened on Indian defense institutions websites and various other websites which were state sponsored, as well as the non-state actors were responsible for that, and they were based out of Pakistan itself. And few years back again there was a report of attack on the administrative wing of the Kudankulam power plant. There were attack on the AIMS server. There were attack on the Mumbai power grid, and they have been linked to some of the state actors based in Pakistan and China. So this cyber and space vulnerability brings us to ensure that we have a proper command. For example, the computer emergency response team is there, the Indian cyber crime coordination center is there, but they are more of the reactive in nature. We need proactive deterrence, that even when the attack is happening, even before the attack is happening, we can prevent that. Also the terror ecosystem in Pakistan, that Pakistan continues to harbor the terror groups under the nuclear shield, that they keep on telling that we have the nuclear power, you cannot attack us, and India showed ki see we are attacking. And we are not attacking you, we are not attacking only your military installations, we already know that where your nuclear facilities are located, and we are also attacking that. But still Pakistan is harboring these terrorist groups, their leaders. They are kept in jail only to show the world, only to prevent the blacklisting of Pakistan in the FATF. And in the jail itself they are getting 5-star hotel facilities. So this terror ecosystem in Pakistan, which is are further responsible for various attacks. So what needs to be done? So there is need for a dedicated cyber command, that we need to establish an integrated defense cyber agency with offensive defensive capabilities, that we are not only preventing but we are also attacking in case of any intelligence of any possible attack that may happen in future. Because in the defense circles, it is believed that the next war will not be fought by the gun or the artillery, but it will be the digital ecosystem where the war will be fought. It will be the drones and the modern infrastructure that will be used for the next war. Also, the revamp of the intelligence agencies, that is to ensure the institutional coordination between the research and analysis wing, RAW, IB, DIA and NTRO, with regular audits and the accountability. Also, the budgetary allocations for the cyber security can be increased. India can also think of joining the Budapest Convention, which can actually help us in tackling the jurisdictional issues with regard to the attacks which are originating out of India. Also, the border infrastructure upgrade. We need to accelerate the construction of all-weather routes, tunnels like Jojila, advanced landing grounds in border zones. Along with that, the Vibrant Village program that was launched, that also needs to be implemented well. And various other measures like bold QRT, etc., they needs to be expanded across all the borders in a time-bound manner. Also, the satellite and the space surveillance, that we need to launch the dedicated military satellites for 24/7 intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance over the LOC and LAC. Again, India has some under the IRNSS, but they need to be expanded. Also, the secure communication systems, we need to deploy the quantum resistant encrypted military communication network for the seamless tri-service operations. Along with that, during the Operation Sindoor, there were reports that before the Pahalgam attack, these gaming apps like PUBG, Ludo, etc., they were utilized for the communication between the militants and their handlers. And so we need a proper oversight mechanism even along these apps, and various other digital footprints needs to be properly monitored, so that any kind of attack that may happen in future, they may be prevented. This is a mains practice question from this topic that you people can write. Moving towards next topic, that is India-Maldives relations. The context of this topic is that Honorable Prime Minister Modi recently visited Maldives as the guest of honor at Maldives Independence Day, which is going to be celebrated today itself. And this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 2, bilateral groupings and agreements involving India and or affecting India's interest, and effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interest. Holding a joint press conference, the Prime Minister said that "Mausam chahe jaisa bhi ho, whatever the weather may be, the relations between both the countries will always remain bright and clear." So there are talks that may happen on the line of credit, trade talks, as well as on the direct flights. What is line of credit? It is a kind of loan. So let's suppose 5,000 rupees worth of line of credit is getting extended. As an example, we are taking it. And the person who is taking this line of credit is only utilizing 1,000 rupees out of this sanctioned 5,000 rupees. So the person who is taking this line of credit, who is utilizing only 1,000 rupees, they will be paying the interest on this 1,000 rupees only, rather than paying interest on this whole 5,000 rupees. So, and the other benefits are that the interests are generally less, and it is not linked, it is not tied fund. Means what this person who is taking the line of credit, or the country who is taking the line of credit, they can spend on any of the work. They are not limited to any specific work. So what happened that in the month of November 2023, when the current Maldives president Mohammad Moiju took the office, there was an anti-India rhetoric that was witnessed, be it in the form of India out campaign, or the gifts like Indian helicopter which was sent back, the military presence that was there on the Maldives soil for the strategic purposes, they were also sent back. And there was a closeness that was witnessed between China and Maldives. However, it was India's mature response that despite having an India out campaign, anti-India rhetoric, India did not go for any of the offensive response, or India responded maturely. You will hardly find any statement against Maldives from India itself. And that is the reason that India had that patience, and now the relations between both the countries have resumed and they are on a positive side. Why the Maldives is so important for India? Because it is located near Indian soil itself, near Indian border itself. For example, the two archipelagos, that is the Lakshadweep and the Maldives, they are part of same chain of coral line itself. And it is very near to India's maritime borders, be it the state of Kerala or the city of the Kochi itself. And it is of geopolitical significance. Why? Because Maldives is of utmost importance, be it with regard to the neighborhood first policy of India, or the security and growth of all in the region, that is the Sagar strategy. And it is strategically positioned between the Gulf of Aden in west and the narrow passage of the Strait of Malacca in the east, as well as it is the Strait of Hormuz in the west, and these areas witness the majority of the trade. So Maldives to some extent is sandwiched between these two major strategic locations, which encompasses major trades between the most of the countries in the world. Also, it ensures freedom of navigation and anti-piracy operations, that India's sea line of communication is located near the Maldives exclusive economic zones, as well as the territorial waters of the Maldives itself. And it is the Maldives which sees a majority of the maritime trade that is coming to India, especially the South India. So along with that, the 50% of India's external trade and 80% of energy imports are the sea line of communication that is witnessing this trade and import is near the Maldives itself. And the anti-piracy operations that are taken by Indian Coast Guard or in some cases Indian Navy. Again, Maldives remains an strategic point for those also. And India's relation with the Maldives has political significance itself. For example, in July 1965, Maldives got independence from United Kingdom itself. India was one of the first countries that recognized Maldives in 1965 itself after it got independence. And one embassy was established also in Mali in year 1972. And India and Maldives are founding members of SAARC, as well as they are signatory to the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, that is SAFTA. More than that, India and Maldives also signed a maritime agreement, boundary agreement in year 1976 itself, which demarcates the exclusive economic zone as well as the territorial waters of the both countries. And this is the reason you'll hardly find any of the disputed areas or the islands or the locations along both the countries. For example, we have the dispute with regard to the Kachatevu Island between India and Sri Lanka. Similarly, the Murray Island dispute or the Sir Creek dispute, but we do not have any significant dispute with the Maldives. Also, the trade pact which was signed between the India and Maldives in year 1981, that also helped in deepening the trade between both the countries, and it initiated a formal trade. And that is the reason you can witness that in year 2013 the trade between both the countries, that was around $154 million. So export to Maldives, that was around $154 million in 2013, that increased to $513.60 million in year 2024. This is the value of India's total export to Maldives in US dollar million. Also, India extended $400 million aid plus rupees 3,000 crore currency swap. So in the majority of the Maldives economy is dependent on the tourism itself. After the COVID-19 restrictions came into place, the tourism industry was hit, and that is the reason the revenue of the Maldives as well as the overall the currency that they had available, the forex reserve that they had, they also depleted to a larger extent. And that is the reason India extended the aid, as well as SBI rolled over $100 million treasury bills. They subscribed to $100 million treasury bills because the forex reserves depleted to a larger extent and there was a risk of default, and that is the reason SBI rolled over $100 million treasury bills, so that the depleted resources, the risk of default can be minimized. Also, both the countries finalized a local currency trade framework, that they are trading in the mutual currencies instead of trading in any hard currency like dollar itself. And in the case of currency swap also, the currencies are swapped, they are given back, trade happens in a mutual currencies. For example, the currency of India and Maldives instead of trading in any of the foreign currencies. Also, India is one of the top trade partners as of 2023 of the Maldives. Export commodities are pharma, cement, agri-goods. Import commodities are scrap metals. In 2022, visa-free entry for the Indian businesses were also allowed in Maldives. And the tourism, that it contributes 25% to Maldives GDP and 70% to employment. India is the top tourist source from 2020 to 2022. In 2022, Open Skies Agreement was also signed to improve the tourism. For example, India was the second source of tourists to Maldives last year from November 2023. That last year. It was the Russia which was the highest contributor and India was the second highest contributor. It is one of the most looked after honeymoon destinations of the people after the marriage. Also, the strategic location, that counters the Chinese footprint in the Indian Ocean region, be it the string of pearls of the China, as well as it also reinforces the India's regional leadership. Also, the training and the capacity building, that India meets the 70% of the Maldives National Defense Forces training needs, and over 1500 personals are trained in Indian defense academies. Also, there are various key exercises that happened between India and the Maldives Defense Forces. For example, Equiverin, which involves the armies of the both countries. Then Ekatha, that happened between the coast guards. And the Dosti, that is a trilateral exercise between India, Maldives and Sri Lanka, that ensures boosting the maritime coordinations. However, there are some roadblocks in India-Maldives relations. For example, the geopolitical rivalries, the China's Belt and Road initiatives, and a string of pearls strategy, that is increasing the footprints in Maldives. For example, one of the major Chinese project is the Sinha Bridge, as well as various military agreements that were signed between India and Maldives. Now, when this Sinha Bridge is being established with the help of India, with the help of China in Maldives itself, tomorrow, if Maldives will not be able to repay back the loan that they have taken to build this bridge, obviously the China will say that give us this bridge on lease for some year. So because of this, there may be increased presence of Chinese, which may have the geopolitical complications for India itself. Then the political shifts, that is India Out campaign that was started in 2023, which signals an anti-India sentiment, but now this has subsidized. Also, the demands of the removal of Indian military personnel, halt of Indian projects, they have been kept into abeyance. Also, the security concerns, rise of radical Islamist group including the Pakistani backed elements and the ISIS that have security that may raise or increase the security complications for India. Although the Maldives risk of becoming a launch pad for attacks on India's interest in future, especially with regard to the states located across the maritime boundaries. All these are the major challenges which needs to be addressed. What is the path ahead? We need multilateral collaboration, that we need to promote the Maldives' active role in Indian Ocean Rim Association. We need to recognize the strategic location of the both countries. We need to understand that both the countries of utmost importance for each other. Also, we need to strengthen the Indian Maldives Sri Lanka trilateral maritime cooperation, because this will also help the both of these countries which are highly dependent on the tourism. Also, the strategic infrastructure, that is fast track key projects like Greater Malay Connectivity Project, they needs to be completed in a time bound manner. Also, there is need for providing the credible alternatives to Chinese funded infrastructure, because if any infrastructure which is being built by the China, if we are providing a sustainable solutions to that, and that too at an affordable or the competitive cost, obviously Maldives may choose us. Also, the people centric diplomacy, that we need to increase the people to people connect, the track 1 track 2 diplomacy, that is we need to expand the civil military cooperation and medical aid community infrastructure, because if both the countries, when there are two countries which are dependent on each other for various aspects, be it trade, be it the diplomacy, be it medical aid, or for the military purposes, their relations will more or less strong, because they know that they are interdependent on each other. Also, we need to enhance the cultural and educational exchanges to build the long-term goodwill. For example, some of the defense forces which are getting trained, or the civil servants which are getting trained, they can be increased. Some of the students of the Maldives could be given some more seats in Indian universities, etc. That can actually help in building the long-term goodwill even after the current president goes from the office, even when any other person assumes the office. This is a mains practice question from this topic that you people can write. In our simplified section, first topic is that why renewables alone can't help. This is related to your GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 14, or explained. So the writer is of view that in the last few years, despite a push by the global community, by the countries, with the launch of International Solar Alliance or various COP meetings that happens, the NDC contributions that were announced by various countries, for example, the Panchamit goals by India itself. Despite that, we are witnessing the increase in the renewable energy installation, but use is still majorly being done of the fossil fuel based electricity. It says that the world added about 582 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in 2024, representing an increase of 15% over the previous year. And this is one of the largest annual increase in the renewable energy capacity in any single year itself. However, the installed capacity of renewable energy across the globe stands at more than 4,442 gigawatt, and around 30% of world electricity is produced from the renewable sources itself. And the report by the International Renewable Energy Agency says that at the current rate of growth that we are witnessing in the renewable energy installation, the world would come close to achieving its target of tripling the renewable energy installed capacity by 2030, and this is very crucial for limiting the global warming and also limiting the global temperatures. Also, The rapid growth of renewable energy, it might give the impression that the world has made good progress on meeting its climate objective. However, the renewable energy had not even begun to replace the fossil fuel at the global level. Why? Because see, before the renewable energy installed capacity, whatever the demand was there, most of that was being met by the fossil fuel based energy itself. But with the time, there has been increase in the demand of the electricity also, which has been majorly met by the fossil fuel based energy, fossil fuel based electricity rather than the renewable energy. There has been various issues why this is there. First of all, the financial constraints. In the initial period, the renewable energy installation charges. More than that, the grid connectivity, that connecting the renewable energy electricity with the grid, that has been one of the major challenges. That is the reason the majority of the demand, increased demand that we have witnessed across the world, they are being met by the fossil fuel based electricity itself. And it is catering mainly to the rising electricity demand, which has increased 3 times since 1990 and is projected to grow even bigger. Demand increase that has been majorly met by the renewable energy. The fossil fuel based energy consumption has been more or less same. Also, around 10% of new electricity installed capacity in 2024 was fossil fuel based. The use of fossil fuel in absolute term is still growing as per the report. And between 2012 to 2013, the global electricity generation grew by 2.5% every year on an average, and renewable energy expanded at a rate of about 6% during the same time. And the fossil fuel currently account for more than 70% of global electricity production. And there are some countries, mainly in the Nordic region, where renewable account for a significantly higher share of the total energy consumption as compared to other countries or the other areas. Why? Because of the low demand that is there, because of low population density that is there. That can be some of the reasons. Because of availability of the more renewable resources, availability of land for installation, all these can be some of the possible reasons why we are witnessing better position in these areas. Also, electricity is still only a small slice of total energy use. Just 20 to 20% of the total energy that is consumed in the world every year is in form of electricity, and 30% of electricity that is generated comes from the renewable sources itself. That means about 6% of world's energy consumption comes from clean sources, and more than 90% still comes from the fossil fuel itself. And there are some regional imbalances in the growth of renewables itself. For example, we witness a very small fraction in the African region. In the Asia itself, it is mainly limited to the countries like China and India itself. And these are the countries like China and India, they are one of the biggest emitters of the greenhouse gases, and that can be one of the reasons why we are witnessing much larger installed capacity in these countries. Also, renewables such as solar and wind might be available universally, unlike say petrol that is found in only limited geographies. But the technologies needed to harness this energy are getting increasingly inaccessible. For example, the solar photovoltaic module, the solar PV module, India is highly dependent on import of these from the China itself. China is one of the highest producer as well as exporter of the solar PV module, and because they are also expanding their renewable energy, the supply of these are not very consistent. Also, the China's economy of scale, low labor cost, and the state subsidies that are given on these renewable energy equipments, the other countries are not able to match to that extent, and that is the reason it is limited to China to a larger extent. Also, China's control over renewable energy system has appear to similar as that was of the OPEC countries with regard to the crude oil. And energy security has emerged as one of the foremost concerns of the countries, pushing many of them to secure whatever option is available to them, irrespective of that whether it is clean or not. Because see, the fossil fuels are getting depleted slowly and gradually. More than that, with the other geopolitical complications that keeps on coming, be it the skirmishes that happened between the Iran and the Israel, or the Russia-Ukraine war that started. So it is not only the availability of the clean energy that is of concern, it is the availability of these energy sources, because tomorrow when we will not have the fossil fuels, whenever the supply will be inconsistent, the people will find it, the countries will find it difficult to fulfill their demand. So as of now, the concern is to ensure that we have the robust supply. It is not whether it is coming from clean or not. So transition to clean and renewable energy is not as simple as it is sometimes made out to be. There are several layers of complexity complexities which make the goal of curbing global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius looks increasingly unrealistic to achieve in the coming time. And if you look into this energy statistics of India 2025 report from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, it also says that coal in the share of total energy production increased from 77% in financial year 23 to 79% in financial year 24. Only about a fourth of coal supply is imported, and you can see that still it is the fossil fuel based electricity, the total energy production that is happening from coal itself. If you look into India's power capacity overview, coal is the India's installed capacity as of now 30th June 2025. This is the most updated data that you will find in the public domain, that out of the total installed capacity, the coal contributes 45.65%, then solar contributes 23.9%, and then hydro which contribute 10.19%. before this, wind which contribute 10.66%. similarly, we have the oil and gas, biopower and the nuclear power. Total installed capacity is of 485 gigawatt. However, if we talk about the source wise electricity generation, it is the coal which is of the highest, contributing 70.34%, and then we have the solar which is 9.01%, then we have the hydro which is 8.34%, and then we have the wind which is 6.42%, nuclear 3.08%, then we have the oil and gas 1.88%, biopower 0.52%, small hydro 0.41%. total generation is 473 BU. Moving towards next topic, that is why coconut oil is on fire. This is related to your GS paper 3 again, trade and agriculture, and it has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 12. So India's retail food inflation fell to a historic low of minus 1.06% in June. That is the lowest since January 2019. It has broken a record of more than 6 years itself. But there are still some items which are fueling the food inflation itself. Among them is the vegetable oils, where an year-on-year price increase reached to 17.75% in June as per the data from NSO. And all India average model retail price of palm oil is currently at rupees 132 per kg, compared with 95 a year ago, as well as the price of soya bean, sunflower, mustard oil have risen from 120 to 154, 115 to 159 and 150 to 176 respectively over the same period. Similarly, the price of coconut oil at Kerala's Kochi market jumped from 22,500 per quintal to 39,000 per quintal, and at retail level the oil is selling at around 460 per kg, close to double it early January price of 240 to 250 rupees. And what are the global factors that are fueling the high prices of the coconut? For example, the Tom Jones, who is the chairman of one of the companies based in Kerala itself, and they are saying that it is mainly due to the Philippines and Indonesia, where the output is falling due to the El Nino induced drought. So El Nino can be defined as the emergence of warmer water in central and eastern Pacific Oceans. Because of this, the monsoon and the rainfall is highly impacted in Indian subcontinent as well as in the other areas of the Asia and Pacific. So that is the reason there has been decrease in the output because of the drought like conditions which has emerged out of El Nino, that we are witnessing the low output of coconut. And these two countries, that is the Philippines and Indonesia, are the world's top producer cum exporters of oil that is extracted from dried white flesh or the kernels of the coconut. And this El Nino event, which lasted from July 23 to 24, affected the growth of coconut flowers and fruit development during 24-25 marketing year that began in October itself. And impact is being felt now, as it takes roughly a year for single coconut to grow from flowering on the tree to a fully mature fruit that is ready for harvesting. So the crop duration is much higher as compared to other cereal crops. Also, the weather disturbance on top of aging coconut plantation in the two countries have led to global supply tightness and buyers scrambling to stock up, because whenever the age of the tree gets increases or the tree gets older, the output decreases, the productivity decreases. which also impacts the overall supply. Also, no immediate supply response to a high price is expected because of coconut trees. Even the improved dwarf and hybrid palm varieties start bearing fruit only in 3 to 5 years. Even the new plants which are planted, they takes time to give fruits. Also, the price sentiment further boosted by the export reports of Indonesian government planning restrictions on the export, because when supply crunch is being also faced in the domestic market, so to curtail the domestic prices, Indonesian government might go for banning the export or restricting the export, which will also fuel the overall export prices or the global market prices, which are also being witnessed as of now. The government of Philippines has introduced a 3% mandatory blending of coconut oil based coconut methyl ester in diesel sold in country from October 2024. So a major chunk of that coconut oil is also being diverted for this blending purposes. That will also limit the supply to the global markets. These are some of the reasons why we are witnessing the overall soaring in the prices. Also, out of 5.7 lakh ton of coconut oil that is produced in India, only about 3.9% it is used for food, that is cooking and frying, and the rest goes into manufacture of hair oil, cosmetic soaps, and in other industrial applications. So when the coconut oil prices will increase, there are chances, there are apprehensions that the price of other consumer goods like hair oil, cosmetic soaps, etc. might also increase. Even in the Kerala, the state that is named after Kera or the coconut tree, the annual consumption of coconut oil is just 2 liters. And the half of consumption of palm oil, that is half of the consumption of palm oil, which is 4 liters, and more than the sunflower oil, which is 1.5 liters. And once Kerala was the top producer of coconut, but now it slipped to 3rd position, Tamil Nadu, and the number 1 position is with the Karnataka itself. And the record high prices of coconut oil may not hurt much given the extent of its marginalization, that is less use which is done by the people, and if it may accelerate the shift to other oils, particularly the imported oils. It is the top exports if we talk about with regard to the agricultural commodities. It is the marine products if you talk about the 23, 24, and then the basmati rice, etc. are there. Top 5 export destination based on the highest exports are USA, UAE, Netherlands, UK, and China. Top import partners are China, Russia, UAE, United States, and Saudi Arabia. This is of overall commodities, whereas this data of top export and top imports is of only agricultural commodities. The top imports is mainly we are spending on the vegetable oils and then the pulses if you talk about the data of the 23-24. Moving towards the next topic, that is India missing out on tackling the UK carbon tax raises the concerns. This is related to your GS paper 3, trade agreement, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 17. So India's effort to secure a cession on its small and medium enterprises under the UK's carbon border adjustment mechanism did not materialize when after the India's text to India-UK free trade agreement were released, and the UK's CBAM, that is Comprehensive Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is set to come into effect from January 1, 2027, is expected to impact India's export of steel, aluminium, cement, as well as various other commodities which are highly using the fossil fuel based energies. Also, as per the CBM regulation, the UK will place a carbon price on the some of the most emission intensive industrial goods which are imported to UK, covering the aluminium, cement, fertilizer, hydrogen, iron and steel sector, which are considered at high risk of the carbon leakages. But the scope will increase going forward. And as no concession was secured under the free trade agreement which was signed between India and UK, India could challenge the regulation at the WTO on the ground that the Comprehensive Border Adjustment Mechanism, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, violates the special and differentiated treatment provisions which advocate the longer implementation period for the developing countries as compared to the developed countries, that there should be a special and differentiated treatment that should be given to the developing countries out of their developing economy as compared to the treatment that will be given to the developed countries. But since the WTO's dispute settlement body is dysfunctional, there are vacancies that are there and it could not function properly in last few years. There are apprehensions that to what extent it may be effective even if India is going forward with the bringing that CBAM to the WTO. Also, let's try to understand how this carbon border tax will work. Let's suppose there is one EU company which is compliant with the EU climate standards, that is including the carbon prices. They will be able to supply products to the EU market itself. Then the non-EU companies, which are, first they will have to look that are they EU climate standards meeting, that whatever the production process that was involved, are they meeting the carbon targets which has been kept under the carbon border adjustment mechanism. That includes the carbon pricing itself. If yes, they will be compliant with the EU standards including the carbon pricing itself, and they will be able to sell their products in the EU market. If that is not the case, they will have to pay the carbon border tax out of the more carbon emissions that these companies are doing. And this tax will be calculated based on the carbon content that they are producing as compared to what has been the standards that has been fixed in the EU itself, multiplied by the carbon price which are predetermined. And after paying this carbon border tax, these companies will be able to sell their products in the EU market. Now, what is the major issue is that if the companies will have to pay this additional tax, their products will become less competitive in the EU market, which might impact the overall export of the country, including the exports from the India itself. Our next topic is the Aprajita bill of the Bengal government. This is related to your GS paper 2, government policies and interventions, issues related to women and child. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 9. So under Article 200, the governor of an state has various options. So bill is a draft legislation, when duly enacted becomes a law or act. So when a bill is passed by the state legislature, then it comes in front of the governor itself, who under the Article 200 have various options. For example, he can give the assent to the bill and then bill will become an act or law. He can withhold the assent and bill will become dead, or he can send it for the reconsideration by the state government or the state legislature, or he can reserve it for the president's consideration itself. And then under Article 201, various options are given to the president for the consideration of that bill. Now, exercising the powers under Article 200, the governor sent back this bill for the state government's reconsideration itself. And the center flags the harsh penalties for the rapes that are given under this bill. For example, under the West Bengal bill, the death sentence if the victim dies or is left in a vegetative state, that they are not responsive out of the complications that may have arisen due to that rape or the violence that the woman was subjected to. And under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, if rape results in victim's death or leaves her in a vegetative state, death penalty is only one of the punishment besides life term or the minimum 20 years in jail. Also, the West Bengal bill, establishment of special court for the cases of sexual violence are given, whereas under the existing law, a centrally sponsored scheme, Department of Justice provide funds for the states for setting up of fast-track special courts for trial of case relating to sexual offences. Also, the probe deadlines, West Bengal bill says that investigation must be concluded within 20 days of the initial report of that conduct of that rape itself. And under the BNSS, investigation must be concluded within 2 months of the filing of the FIR. For trial, it specifies framing of charge within 60 days from the first hearing and judgment within 30 days, maximum of 60 days after the arguments concludes. And also this disclosing victim's identity, imprisonment of 3 to 5 years under the West Bengal bill, and it is 2 years under the BNS. Also, the voluntary causing grievous hurt by use of acid, etc. Under the BNS, imprisonment of not less than 10 years, which may extend to imprisonment for life and fine to be paid to the victim. Whereas under the Aprajita bill, rigorous imprisonment for life, which shall mean rigorous imprisonment for the remainder of the life, that person's natural life, and with the fine itself. Also, voluntary throwing or attempting to throw acid under the BNS, imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, which may extend to 7 years and also shall be liable to fine. Under the Aprajita bill, rigorous imprisonment for life, which shall mean rigorous imprisonment for the remainder of the person's natural life and with fine. So center says that under the bill, so there was this unfortunate incident that happened in one of the medical college of the West Bengal, and that is the reason after that incident the West Bengal government came with this Aprajita bill. But center says that these measures, the punishments which has been announced under the bill, they are much harsher, and that is one of the reason the governor sent back this bill for the reconsideration by the state government. Our next topic is related to hemophilia, and this is related to your GS paper 3 biotechnology, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 4. So some of the patients who are suffering from the hemophilia has approached the Delhi High Court. Why? Because the availability of the drugs that are needed, or the dose of the recombinant factor drug which are used to treat the patients of the hemophilia, they are not available across the hospitals of the Delhi. There is severe crisis which is being witnessed out with regard to that drug, and that is the reason they are traveling to Jaipur twice a week for the treatment of the hemophilia itself. So hemophilia is a hereditary disease that leads to a blood clotting disorder. In the two most well-known forms of the hemophilia, A and B, the blood lacks one of the proteins that are required for the coagulation, that is the coagulation factors. So based on this coagulation factors, the hemophilia can be categorized into hemophilia A and hemophilia B. In the normal blood vessel, whenever the blood vessel gets damaged, then the bleeding happens, and then the blood clotting, that is because of the blood clotting, that bleeding will stop. However, with the person with the hemophilia, whenever the normal blood vessel gets damaged, when the bleeding starts, there is inability to form clots. Why? Because of the hemophilia, and that leads to excessive bleeding. So even for a minor cut, there can be excessive bleeding for the patients who are suffering from the hemophilia itself. And with regard to the hemophilia genetic inheritance, you can read it from this picture, that how it may lead to sons or daughters having the hemophilia if either mother or the father was suffering from the hemophilia. There are some other blood disorders like leukemia, that is the cancer of the blood or the bone marrow; anemia, that is condition in which red blood cell count is less than the normal; then the lymphoma, which is a form of blood cancer that develops in lymph system. Two major groups of lymphoma are the Hodgkin lymphoma and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Then the hemophilia we have already seen, and the thalassemia, which is again an inherited blood disorder which is caused by the lack of protein that is called as the hemoglobin in the red blood cells itself. That is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.